Want to know why Garrett Wilson of the Jets is another great start here in Week 9? And are we going to get rebounds from Chris Olave and Zay Flowers and other key wide receivers? We break it down for you as we look at our wide receiver and tight end rankings. Only on Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day as well. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL betting and fantasy for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
All right, it's my favorite time of the week, and we like to look at wide receivers and tight ends, break down the matchups for you. So we have some similar rankings early, and we're going to get into a little bit of a diversity there across the board, and also look at how we think this tight ends stack up. A lot of teams on bye, a lot of key tight ends and wide receivers not available with the Broncos, Lions, Jaguars, 49ers all out. So you might extend and play players that you normally wouldn't. We'll get into those players in a moment. It is Crossover Thursday all across the network. It's brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lowercase LockedOnNFL, for first deposit match up to $100. All right, Michelle, let's dive right in. And we do have, strangely, I don't know if this has ever happened before, the same top 5 at wide receiver, but then we're on a different path.
Yeah, it's not even that we have the same top 5 guys. They're the exact same order. It goes Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Stephon Diggs, all in amazing in what should be high scoring matchups this week. So they should all score a ton of points in their games. After that, though, you have a very surprising wide receiver sitting there at number 6. You have Chris Olave. Wide receiver 6. I'm not as bold as you are. I'm at wide receiver 20. He gets the Bears this week. Why are you so high on him?
Well, I think I need to will this to happen. I have him on my team, and he's okay, but he has had basically one big week, and that was way back in week 1 where I really liked him. Otherwise, it's been dependent on connecting with Derek Carr. But I think this is the week that it happens. The secondary for the Bears, they have one really good corner in Jalen Johnson. We'll see how it plays out between the matchups here. I think they'll use Chris Olave a little bit more inside here this week, try to scheme him open. And look, there's no pass rush from Chicago. We saw guys flying down the field pretty easily. Quentin Johnston even did some stuff here for the Chargers against the Chicago secondary. So this is as good a spot as any to get going. He's a guy that I would look to trade for as soon as I could, because this is a very favorable schedule coming up for the Saints with a lot of exploitable pass defenses here. So, and I expect this connection to get going at some point. This seems like the best opportunity to do so. So, look, I'm being a little aggressive with Chris Olave. I need it. I'm willing it to try to happen here at number 6. So, he should be treated as the number 1 receiver. I don't want to see Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed get this treatment. He should be barking and saying, look, I need 14 targets. I need to catch 10 of these, and let's go here. So that's why I'm going Olave based on this matchup, and hopefully the Bears oblige here.
Yeah, so he is getting a lot of targets. So that's for sure. I don't know what's going on with Derek Carr and Chris Olave. Their connection is just so off. I mean, even last week, the ball hit Chris Olave in right in the face, and it could have been a nice long catch and possibly a touchdown after that as well. PFF is projecting Olave to face Jalen Johnson, the Bears' best defensive player and top corner, the most snaps out of all the Saints wide receivers this week. So the Saints will have to get creative, move Olave around. We'll see if they're willing to do that. I am a wide receiver 20. You're still plugging him in my mind. Like, I'm still happy to play him. Not as bold as you are. A guy I am bolder on than you are is Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver for the Colts this week. It's to face the Panthers. They have a lot of injuries in their secondary this season. And you know who loves Michael Pittman more than I do? Gardner Minshew. Oh man, he looks for Gardner Minshew looks for Michael Pittman in every single play. PFF says that Pittman will get CJ Henderson for most of the time in this game. CJ Henderson has a 42 PFF coverage grade this year, the 5th worst among cornerbacks. So it's a really juicy matchup. He's getting a ton of targets. I love him this week. I have him at wide receiver 9. You have him at wide receiver 19.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I have a little bit down here is I think this is going to be a low volume game, and we can't get too excited about what we saw there with the Panthers. I mean, they completely somehow shut down the Texans receivers, so that was something weird to watch. And I don't know if this is going to be necessarily like shootout. I think there could be a lot of running in this game, and maybe get some production there. I don't know if you'll get Pittman necessarily having to have a big volume game. I think, yes, he has a very good chance to score in this game, but I also like Josh Downs quite a bit as a wide receiver too. So that's what I'm looking at. It's kind of equal between these two guys to me. I don't know if there's too much separation in terms of their production. I really don't have Downs too far down from him. I'm at 28. You have him at 27. So I think the way they're both being used, it's great. They're both recommended fantasy plays this week. Just a little bit down from you, but yeah, I think he's going to be definitely productive this week. I just think if he's going to get to your wide receiver 9, I think it comes down to his touchdown.
So those are a couple guys we disagree on slightly, but one guy we are on the same exact wavelength about this week. It's Garrett Wilson, Jets wide receiver. We both have him as a top 10 wide receiver fantasy play this week. I have him at wide receiver 10. You have him at wide receiver 8. He gets to face the Chargers, who have been allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. And Garrett Wilson has had at least 12 targets in 3 of the last 4 games. So Zach Wilson has figured out I need to heavily target Garrett Wilson because that's my only chance at success. And it really is. And it's been working out the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I do like what Zach Wilson is doing because he's making it easy for us, right? We don't need to extend too far. I mean, Alan Lazard got a few key looks, and he was key to the win last week. But in reality, he's a better player. They didn't really throw to Tyler Conklin and connect with him. He had targets, but CJ Uzomah was the tight end who had the catches. That was just pretty much Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, going back and forth. Wilson's target share is creeping near 40%, which is insane. So that is good, actually. I don't know if it would be that high, actually, with Aaron Rodgers, because I think Rodgers would be a little bit more confident to spread the ball around. And I think the happiest moment for me was I wasn't sure Garrett Wilson was going to come through in my 100-yard prediction. And then we had some bonus football there in overtime against the Giants. So then, yes, he hit that 100 mark here.
On the
I
dot.
like it. Yeah, right on the dot. So, like, it was interesting prediction that just came true here. So the Chargers, look, they weren't really tested last week. I think Zach Wilson will have more success than people would like to admit in this particular game just because the Chargers are not that good on the back end. And if he's going to keep targeting his best players, Wilson and Breece Hall, they're going to help him score some points here this week. I'm not saying you look at Zach Wilson unless you're in a deep super flex, but Garrett Wilson is attached to him, and that's a good thing at this point because if he's targeting him a lot and he's going to just throw to him no matter what, that's great news for his production against the secondary for the Chargers, which is very weak here all season long.
Yeah, I agree. Love Garrett Wilson this week. 2 guys, though, on the same team that we don't know what the quarterback situation is like. They've been hot this year, but completely disappeared last week. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua with Matthew Stafford dealing with the hurt thumb. We don't know if it's going to be him playing with that hurt thumb or Brett Rypien. That's not any better either. I mean, they're both really bad options. They have to face the Packers, not the best of matchups for wide receivers. I really don't know what advice to give with Kupp and Nacua besides, like, in the leagues I have them, I'm still plugging them in, and I'm just hoping they pleasantly surprise me.
Yeah, the one thing that is notable here with the Packers is they did trade away Rasul Douglas, who was playing pretty well here on the outside. I think if you're going to say who's going to get Jair Alexander, who actually is not playing really well, is Puka Nacua, and we'll see. I mean, you might get Cooper Kupp in a really good matchup. The problem with Cooper Kupp is he's had some decent matchups the last couple of weeks. He just disappeared. I don't know if he looks completely right and healthy. He had that big game when he immediately came back, but then it's been underwhelming. I mean, to see Cooper Kupp having 2 bad games like that, they were just bad. They were not really interesting at all because, again, they were trailing last week and he couldn't even get the garbage points right in the middle of the field. So I know they had the quarterback change, the injury to Stafford. I think Stafford might gut it out and play, which is going to help the value of both these guys. I think, however, just looking at the eye test and the way the players are playing, I think Nacua has a way better chance to rebound than Cooper Kupp in this one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty equal, but Nakua does seem like the more confident and stronger fantasy asset right now. Again, we both have them ranked in the teens, right?
Yeah.
Normally they're both ranked in top 10. This week we're a little bit nervous about them, but you're still plugging them in into your wide receiver spots, and it might not be as delicious as you're hoping for what they normally put up, but it should still be all right, just not as high as you typically are hoping for. But that's like the top guys this week. And then we still have a lot more of that second tier wide receivers to get to in our second segment.
Yeah, if Kupp struggles for a third straight week, then I'm going to start being concerned. So let's hold out hope that he acts like he's the player from a couple of years ago. So let's hope for that for sure from him. Now we will get into those wide receivers after a word from one of our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by DoorDash. And look, we're working hard on Sundays. We got football wall to wall here. We don't have time to get out there and do things, especially when it's colder outside and it's potentially raining. We just want to watch football. Well, DoorDash is going to come to the rescue here and deliver our local favorites, whatever we want. With pizza and wings always sound great on game day. And it's really fantastic that you have a reliable service for you to come through in the clutch and allow you to just stay in front of the TV, just run out, pick it up, and you're good to go here. So really, this is a way to get you through your Sunday in the right way. And you can order all those local favorites. You can kick back at kickoff there. Unbeatable deals that are always available there at DoorDash. And you can also get food from groceries. So if you're looking to get some snacks and stock up on that, that's another way to go on game day. And it's great. Stock up and do it without leaving your own house. And get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code LOCK23. That's LOCK23, all caps. Check it out. That's 50% off, $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code LOCK23. Subject to change. Terms do apply. All right, time to continue looking at our wide receiver rankings and matchups here for Week 9. Let's start here with Thursday night. DeAndre Hopkins. It's a pretty good matchup. They were moving around their corners again in Pittsburgh. Looks like Patrick Peterson could be on the outside in the Hopkins matchup. First, we know he went off on only 4 catches here last week, 3 touchdowns, stretched the field, pushed 130 receiving yards here. So when you look at it, it looks good for Hopkins to stay hot. I don't know if he's going to go off again. I'm going to guarantee that he's not going to do the same thing this week against the Steelers pass rush, but I think he's going to get the volume, the targets, and have a shot at another 100-yard game here.
Yeah, I mean, 128 yards last week, 140 just a couple weeks ago. So he's been putting up some pretty big numbers. Last week was the first week he scored and had 3 touchdowns. That's not going to happen again, like you just said. But I do really like him in this matchup. The Steelers are giving up a ton of yards. Not a lot of points, but a ton of yards. So 6th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers because of all those receiving yards they're giving up. Their secondary is not very good. Hopkins is dealing with a bit of a toe injury, but he says he's good to go. So you plug him in, and I think he will be Will Levis's top target again. 2 guys I am just deciding between this week. So I put a question in here because I want you to decide for me, Vinny.
Oh, great.
DK Metcalf against the Ravens or T. Higgins against the Bills this week. I am leaning towards one. I want to see if you agree with me.
Yeah, this is really hard for me because I look at these matchups on paper and they don't look all that inviting, right? If you look at them either way, but I think I have to go with DK. Here's why. I just think this is a game where the Seahawks could actually trail a little bit and they'll be throwing. And I do see maybe T. Higgins, maybe getting that Douglas matchup. We'll see if they get him out there, but this could be just feed Jamar Chase a lot, right? With no Tre'Davious White there. And look, he's involved, but keep in mind there's some other guys cutting into it. I know Jackson Smith and Jigba is kind of throwing things off a little bit, right? With DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Lockett has still been able to produce. Metcalf maybe not as much because JSN is scoring a little bit in that range where Metcalf would. So it's really hard. I think if I'm going to go for the ceiling, I'm going to Metcalf always. I think it's a particular matchup where, again, I could see the Seahawks throwing about 30 to 35 times, where I think the Bengals actually, the way they kind of dominate the Bills, I don't know if they're going to throw as much. And we do like Joe Mixon. We like Jamar Chase. So I think if I'm going for a few bigger numbers, I go with DK Metcalf. I think with Higgins, he might be a little touchdown dependent, especially as they're involving more receivers with Cincinnati.
So I was going the opposite way. So now you made things hard for me. I had to rethink this. DK did have 14 targets last week, only turned into 5 receptions, 67 yards. I think DK is a little banged up. Same thing with Higgins, right? But Higgins comes back. He actually catches the ball thrown his way, has 5 receptions, 69 yards. My thing is he only played on 67% of snaps last week because you think he's still recovering from the rib injury. If that goes back up to his normal 85, 90% of snaps, I do think he has a really good game. So I really do want to play T. Higgins this week. I think I'm going to throw him in. But DK, looking at his target share, he should have a much better week. It was a tough matchup against the Browns last week. Not the easiest, though, against the Ravens. They are allowing some yards to wide receivers, but they're the best defense in the league in terms of points per game allowed, just like in the NFL. So pretty tough matchup for both of these guys, but the Bills a little bit weaker with all the injuries. I'm fine playing both of them. I have T. Higgins ranked a little bit higher. We'll be interested to see those two this week. One that's one wide receiver that I found extremely hard to rank this week is Jordan Addison against the Falcons. But instead of having Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, he will be playing with 5th-round rookie quarterback Jaren Hall. Jordan Addison has been really good since Justin Jefferson's been out. But what can we expect here with Jaren Hall at quarterback?
I think he's a borderline wide receiver 2 or 3. And keep in mind that this is also a compressed passing game. I think you can dump KJ Osborne out of this mix, like in terms of the volume. But TJ Hawkinson, he's a tight end. He's a security blanket for the rookie. You got 2 rookies as well. I mean, Jaren Hall and Jordan Addison have probably worked together quite a bit here. So I think he's going to have to target these 2 guys, right? And what I like about Jordan Addison is you can move him inside and play him there. I think Osborne might draw the AJ Terrell matchup. Again, he can't fight through that the way DeAndre Hopkins can. So I think you're going to see a lot working in the middle of the field, some safe passes, throwing. I don't know if they're going to adjust too much to say, hey, we're a pass-happy team, but we want to protect Jaren Hall, we're going to get conservative. I don't know if they're going to do that, right? I mean, they have to play their offense a little bit here. So I do like Addison quite a bit, only because he can avoid that matchup, I think, inside all over the field. So I think they're not going to have him there. I mean, we know that he has that slot potential, and I think that's a smart way to play him. So I don't really think he has a high ceiling. He has a decent floor this week, but I do think the top target, however, for Hall will be Hawkinson.
It is interesting because Jaren Hall played with Puka Nacua at BYU. They both went in the 5th round. Jaren Hall went about 11 picks earlier than Puka. And the thing is, Puka went so late because he wasn't putting up big numbers with Jaren Hall. Yeah. I didn't watch BYU football. I don't know what the system was like. I don't know if that was Jaren Hall's fault or whatnot. Maybe they just weren't passing a ton. But I am worried about Jordan Addison this week. I am still plugging him in because he's been so good. I have him ranked in the middle of the 20s for wide receivers. Typically, if Kirk Cousins was still here, I'd have him as a top 15 guy. So I have him dropped a little bit, but he's still a solid wide receiver 2/flex play this week for me. You are much higher on Zay Flowers against the Seahawks than I am. You have him at wide receiver 18. I have him all the way down at wide receiver 31. The reason why I'm lower on him, he's clearly the top target, the top wide receiver target for the Ravens, for sure. But that's just not turning into very many yards. It's not turning into very many fantasy points, at least consistently. And the Seahawks defense has been really, really good over the last handful of weeks. Actually, since weeks 4 through 8, they are allowing the fewest points per game in the NFL and the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. Like, they got healthy since the beginning of the year, and they're really starting to shut down teams. That's what worries me a bit here with Zay Flowers. I know he's getting the targets, but again, like 19 yards, 50 yards, 56 yards. It's just like, it's not turning into a lot. And he has 1 touchdown all year long.
Yeah, I think I'm just going with the fact that I think the Seahawks secondary is still pretty vulnerable here. And again, maybe we're not kind of really focusing on this game as much as we should, because it's a marquee game that's kind of flying under the radar with all those other games, right? And maybe there's going to be some excitement here. So I do look at Zay Flowers. I think he'll get the better matchup on the outside, and Odell Beckham Jr. is clearly frustrated, and he's not being used at all there the way you would like, and Nelson Aguilar. And then the Seahawks have actually gotten better at tight end. They were kind of weak against that position. They got a little bit better. I think David Njoku did some things well, but when you look at it, they could contain Mark Andrews, right, and put it on Zay Flowers a little bit more. But yeah, I think he's more of a PPR based play. It's really hard to expect a touchdown from him. It's really hard. And then the big play, he has to get at least one big play to pay off at my level here this week.
So a guy that I would rather play over Zay Flowers or Jacoby Myers, which we'll hit on here in a second, it's Rashid Rice for the Chiefs. I think he's a fantastic flex player, wide receiver to play against the Dolphins this week. 50 plus receiving yards in each of the last 3 weeks, played a career high 60% of snaps last week. And you just expect a ton of points in this matchup, right? Highest over under on DraftKings. They have him at 50.5 point total for this game. So they're expecting a ton of points. And we know after Travis Kelce, Rashid Rice, the next guy, I think he's like really right there on the edge of a huge breakout. So when I'm looking at a guy like Rashid Rice or Zay Flower or Jacoby Myers, who has to play with Aiden O'Connell, and we know the one start he had, all the targets went to Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs. He only had 4 targets. Last week, Jacoby Myers did absolutely nothing. So would you rather go with Rice or Myers, or Flowers you have ranked super high, so I'm guessing him, but let's hit on Myers and Rice here.
Well, I think actually I'm not sure the volume that Rice is going to get. That's why I can't put him too high. I really love the matchup this week in the slot. Kader Kohu has struggled in a lot of games this season, so there's a potential there to make things happen. We did see Juju Smith-Schuster in one snap. I mean, similar positions they play, and kind of the big slot type, and they did have him score on the one opportunity he had, and essentially that's what's happening, right? Rashid Rice is replacing Juju Smith-Schuster as a big slot, and he was the most productive receiver in Kansas City. But the question is, how much volume, right? Are they just going to go nuts and spread it around everybody, which could happen, right? It could be a big Travis Kelce game. The Dolphins cannot cover the tight end. So is it just everyone else trickling down from there? I think what I like Zay Flowers a little bit more is he's clearly the number one target. I like Jacoby Myers also because, again, you did see Aiden O'Connell just to play the hits and target the guys that he wants to see most on the field. So sometimes that rookie quarterback spark helps, right? I mean, it's not like Jacoby Myers did anything with Jimmy Garoppolo in Detroit, so this can only go up for him. But yeah, I just think those guys are a little bit more consistently involved when those offenses are going than Rashid Rice, and that's the only reason. I do love the matchup, however, this week, and he's definitely playable as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for that big breakout game. I really do think it's coming for Rashid Rice.
Yeah.
We'll see. The game after for the Chiefs is the Eagles. So in one of these 2 games and these high-scoring games, he should have his breakout. I'm just waiting for it. We're going to get into the tight ends in our last segment here. A lot of good tight ends on bye. So the tight end, it gets really weak here pretty quickly. So we'll jump into those after we hear a word from our sponsor. Do you love playing daily fantasy? You should try out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. Prize Picks adds a ton of excitement to the sports viewing experience. Players can choose from a vast selection of sports and stat types not offered anywhere else. They can even pick in-game projections after a game has started, which includes halves, quarters, periods, and more. if you want to hop in the fun, my favorite pick for the Thursday night football game is Derrick Henry, Titans running back, to have more than 71.5 rushing yards against the Steelers' super weak rush defense. He's going to run all over them. He could have 72 rushing yards by halftime tonight. So if you want to place that pick for tonight or another pick for a game this weekend, go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, hopping into these tight end rankings, I said before we finished our last segment, I mean, you have Sam Laporta on bye, George Kittle on bye, Evan Ingram on bye. So there's not a lot of great options left. Obviously, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson sitting right at the top. We both love Dalton Kincaid this week. He's been fantastic. And I think you just keep plugging him in, and I expect greatness from him this week against the Bengals, who are allowing the most fantasy points to tight ends this season. Kincaid's been fantastic with Dawson Knox out on IR.
Yeah, I mean, these are the things you can't predict, right? Same thing happened with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? His breakout happened because David Montgomery got hurt. But you kind of maybe have to build that in a little bit, right? The veteran could get hurt. And in this situation, we needed Dawson Knox to get hurt to unlock Dalton Kincaid. It forced the Bills to do it. They also were struggling a bit offensively, so they kind of got Kincaid and Khalil Shakir involved behind Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Now, Kincaid, you look at this matchup, the Bengals have just not been good against the tight end all season long. Big reason why Jesse Bates, Von Bell, their two safeties from last year have been gone. They didn't do anything to really replace those guys. They're in coverage. So that's why. And I think that part of the field is going to be open. Their corners are also very good. That funnels things there here as well for the tight end. So Dalton Kincaid's in a good spot to be productive. He also could be a reality game changer for them, right? He's a different type of matchup beater that can help them in this matchup that hasn't been good for them against Joe Burrow. So I really like his value this week. Another guy that, just keep rolling with it. Just don't fight it anymore. Taysom Hill. I mean, stop fighting it. I mean, he is just going to keep getting involved here. I have him at number 4 just because, look, he's just explosive here. And I actually have Dalton Kincaid right behind him. You have Kincaid at 5, Taysom Hill at 6. So we're both expecting him to just produce here. Like, he doesn't even have to catch passes anymore. I think if he gets in the end zone, you're good, right? And he can easily be the goal line back. And this Bears matchup is awesome. They're going to score a lot of points here in the Superdome against them. So, yeah, so I love it this week. Taysom Hill, just stop. I mean, my only lament about Taysom Hill is you got to play him at tight end or flex at this point. You can't play him anywhere else. I wish we could play him at quarterback. Quarterback has been so terrible. I wish we could play him at wide receiver or running back, anywhere else. Like, we would love to have that positional value. Yeah, but you got to play him at tight end. So if you don't have better options, you got to play him because it's like getting a running back in there in your lineup.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. He's finished as a tight end 9, tight end 5, tight end 2 in half PPR leagues over the last 3 weeks. Like, and that it's a great option, right? I still have Dalton Kincaid. I have Dawson. Oh my goodness. Why can I not think of this man's name? Dallas Goedert. Oh my goodness, that just went away from me. Dallas Goedert and Dalton Kincaid, I still have ahead of Taysom Hill, but I am at tight end 6. After those top tier tight ends options, he is the next best option you can go for. After Taysom Hill, like I said, these tight ends die off pretty quickly in these rankings, but we both have Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson at number 7. So we're saying he's the next best option besides the ones that we really feel confident will give you points. The Eagles are allowing the 3rd highest completion percentage and 4th most touchdowns per game to the tight end position this year. And surprisingly, Ferguson is leading the Cowboys in red zone targets and receptions this season. I wouldn't have guessed that. So I think he does have a great chance of finding the end zone this week. And that's why I have him at number 7.
Yeah, you have to do that. I mean, the way he played last week is great. It's another good matchup. They're starting to pass more. When you look at the targets, pretty much you have CeeDee Lamb, a little bit of Brandon Cooks, a little bit of the running backs, but you're not really getting Michael Gallup all that involved. So they got to go to Jake Ferguson next. And we know the tight end is always a part of what Dak Prescott likes to use over the field, especially in the red zone. So Jake Ferguson, yeah, I think he'll come through again. Now, one guy, he hasn't been great all year. And first, Michelle, I'm going to say it's really easy to mix up all these names because there's a lot of Daltons and Davids and Dawsons and Dallas and all these names. And this is another guy, David Njoku, that we might have forgotten about. We haven't really talked about him, but he's there. He's actually producing at top 12. That's how bad tight end has been. I think it's more a reflection of that. It's almost like last year, right? You were like, really? This guy's a startable tight end? Well, look, the Cardinals have actually shored up against the tight end this season, but again, we know that they allowed Mark Andrews to go off last week. So David Njoku is actually been helped by the PJ Walker quarterback situation because, again, they also got rid of Donovan Peoples-Jones. I know he's not a big factor, but still one receiver down they didn't replace here with Elijah Moore and Mark Cooper. So he's going to be okay. I mean, really would like a touchdown out of him. That's good if he can do that for you. But look, he can get like 4 catches for 50, something like that. I think this game definitely calls for that.
Yeah, we have him at tight end 9, which is saying he's probably not going to be too amazing, but I will like him better. Like I might move him down if it ends up being Deshaun Watson starting. He has been getting more targets with PJ Walker, 9 targets, 8 targets the last 2 games. He has been a go-to guy for PJ Walker. So I like that better if Walker has to start. Watson did practice yesterday. We'll see if he actually gets to start, but I will move him down if it is Watson. We had to talk about Trey McBride because he had a career game last week. I mean, it was a huge monster game for him. 14 targets. Love that. But he has to go into Cleveland, play the Browns. I don't love that. So if you're deciding between Trey McBride, who had a huge game, or Logan Thomas, who's been relatively consistent for the tight end position, he has to face the Patriots. Which one would you rather go with?
I think I would go with Trey McBride. And part of it is I think the Patriots are going to know what do they do, try to take away what the opponent does best, right? And they're going to make sure with Kyle Duggar and all their guys that they're going to contain the middle of the field because they know Sam Howell likes to go there. Like control the middle, pass rush Sam Howell, and you can beat him a little bit. So I think you'll see a little bit more work to the outside here that maybe Sam Howell's not comfortable with as much. I'm not getting too nerdy here and putting him too far down. I still have him at 11 because tight end is that bad, and he has a very good chance he can score. So if you're looking for like 3 for 25 and a score, maybe you get that from Logan Thomas. But if you're looking for like 6 for 60 or something like that, that could actually come from Trey McBride in this game. And I think, look, the Browns corners are also very good. So I don't think you'll see much from Hollywood Brown or Michael Wilson or any of these corners. They're just going to let the middle of the field be open. So it's kind of the opposite of that here with what the Patriots might be doing defensively. So I do like Trey McBride if I'm going for like yardage, PPR that type. But if
so if you're going for yardage, I just want to give you a stat here real quick. The Browns have allowed a total of 133 receiving yards to the tight end position this year. Every single tight end they have faced, they've allowed a combined total 133 receiving yards this year to tight ends. That's absurd. I mean, it's by far, far, far the fewest in the NFL. Maybe they just haven't faced great competition, but oh my goodness, that's just crazy to me. That's so low.
I just think that's going to be the only source of the passing game this week for Clayton Tune. And they're not going to care. Like if the Browns have a big lead, right, what are they going to do? They're going to leave the middle of the field open. That's kind of what happened right last week because remember Baltimore was very good against the tight end, and they were like, okay, if you just want to throw short passes at Trey McBride all day while they're trailing, go for it. So that's the one hope I'm looking.
That's also my worry is that was with Josh Dobbs last week, his 14 targets. We don't know. Does Clayton Tune target him like that? I think it's left to see. I don't want to play Trey McBride this week. I would rather go with Logan Thomas just for some safety PPR points. It's not going to be pretty for either guy. One, I actually will say this is a player I'd rather play than both Logan Thomas and Trey McBride if Gerald Everett is out again with his hip injury. If Gerald Everett misses again this week, I think Donald Parham Jr. for the Chargers is a very good option to throw in if you're struggling there at tight end. He gets the Jets, who have been very suspect to tight ends this year. He got 5 targets, 4 receptions, 43 yards, and a touchdown. Like we know that even when Everett was out there, that Herbert's been looking Parham's way around the end zone. Like they've been using him there. And then also you have an injury to Josh Palmer. He's banged up. Quentin Johnston's kind of trying to do his thing. And then teams are just bracketing Keenan Allen, making it really hard to get him targets. So I really like Parham this week if Everett's out.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a primetime game, and the Chargers tend to have random tight end touchdowns. And Parham has been one of those guys. I can't explain it why it happens, but it always seems to happen when they're in prime time that a tight end scores for the Chargers. Like, it's just a weird thing. I do get what you're going with here because I do like Gerald Everett. It's a great matchup for the tight end against the Jets. That's what they basically allow, right? They're very good against slot receivers. So Keenan Allen can be in check. They're very good on the outside. But again, this is you have to give up something, right? If someone's going to be on the field. And yeah, Parham, there's definitely some upside there. I do like Gerald Everett. I have him a little bit pretty high here, 13. So like if Everett sits, and you have an interesting at Parham at 15. So that, kind of checks out where.
And I'll move Parham up if Everett's out.
Yeah, I think that's what you'll say is like you want to target whoever's starting at tight end for the Chargers this week. The matchup just lines perfectly if you're desperate and you just look, if you don't want to go sloshing through the waiver wire trying to get more help for 1 week play, right? For George Kittle, Evan Ingram, or Sam Laporta, that's where you go this week with Donald Parham. But watch that. Gerald Everett is also available in league. So just, again, Charger starting tight end insert here for some bye week help, and I think you'll be good to go.
Yeah, love that.
All right, so there's our look at our wide receiver and tight ends. We'll close the week looking at some sleepers, flex plays, dart throws, all that good stuff here. So maybe some crossover into DFS that you can target there for some players that we haven't talked about. We'll do that on our final show of the week. Make sure that you're checking out all the great shows here in the network. One of them is our Locked On NFL Kickoff live show. It's football season in the middle here, and it's live every 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. That includes this one here with our hosts Tanutra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs. I'll take you through every game in the NFL, look at it through betting, fantasy, all the angles there. Check it out. Get in-depth local analysis as well on the show. Check it out. It is on Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday. It goes on the site here at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Look at our wide receiver and tight end rankings.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.